On today's super tutorial, what we're going to be talking about is how to do this logo effect. So as we scroll down this page, the logo itself has this overlay effect where we can see the outline of the logo itself. Now this looks like it could be quite complex. We might need a lot of JavaScript to do this effect, but actually it's a lot simpler than it looks. So what we're going to be talking about in today's tutorial is how we do this effect. So the first thing that we've done is we made a quick demo that looks something like this, just a fairly basic product page. And we can see from the HTML, it's fairly straightforward. We have a section tag that goes around all of these products, and each product has its own box, this div tag. Inside each one has an image and some text, H2. And what we can see in the CSS is it's fairly straightforward. We have a font face, which is Sprat, which is this font here. We've got a background with some typography, a margin, and then on the section, we're using a flex box. Here, what we're saying is display flex, which means it goes round in a wrap, going across in the row, and we're aligning all the items to the bottom, which is down here, which is why they said the bottom here. And we're justifying the content into the center, which is why everything's moving into the center as we scroll down this page. So what we want to do is similar to what we have on this page. We want a logo that basically sits underneath everything first of all. Let's ignore this kind of outline effect. So what we're going to do is just quickly make this logo. Now in Figma, I've just quickly made some text. I'm using SHI, super high in the kind of short. And what we're going to do on this logo is I've just written this as a text. I'm going to right click this and convert to an outline stroke. And basically this just gives me a bit more control over the actual shape of this area. Now I'm going to give this frame a name called filled logo. And I'm going to make sure that when I export this, I'm going to remove the fill. I don't want this white background in there. And I'm going to convert to an SVG. And I'm going to do this on the desktop. So what I should get on my desktop now is this filled logo. Now what we could do is just quickly add this to the project and put it into the background of the page. So just to kind of show you this very quickly, what we could have done is added on the background color. I could also add a background image with this URL of filled logo.svg. And you can see there, I've got my background logo. Obviously not correct, but kind of what we want to some degree. But what we're going to do is instead treat it as almost like a content sandwich, what we have right now. We have all the things in here right now. And basically I want the bread of this content. I want something behind this, which is the main logo, and something in front of it. So basically we need two logos. We want a background logo and a front one. So what we're going to do first of all is I'm going to go into my index.html and I'm going to add the background logo. So here we're going to add before the actual section, we're going to add a new div tag. And this div tag, I'm going to put no content in here, but I'm going to give it a class of filled, basically the filled logo. Now, because there's no content in here, I'm just going to remove the space to make it a little bit easier when I come back to this. But at the moment, because there's no content, there's no style to this. Let's go and add some style. So in my style.css, I'm going to go to the bottom, and for this new div tag, which has a class or a dot of filled, I'm going to make this fill the entire page. So I want to fill it in on the page wherever I see it. If I scroll, I want it to be there. So I'm going to do position fixed in the top left corner at 0 and 0. And I'm going to give this a width of 100% and a height of 100%. Now, of course, we can't see this at the moment, but let's just see it in action. Let's give it a background color of red. And what this should do is fill the entire page. Now, of course, I don't want this to be red. Instead, I'm going to get rid of this for a background image. So background image, the URL is filled logo.svg. And we can see it looks kind of like what we had with the background style, except it's now on top. Now what I can do here is actually style this up correctly. Now I want to get rid of this repeat first of all. So background repeat is no repeat. There we go. Now I can move this into the middle of the page by using background position, which is in the center. I'm going to add center twice, so it's in the center in both directions. And I want this to basically fill the entire page. So I want to see this. I don't want this to cut off. So I'm going to change the background size to be contain. I want to contain this within the page. Now, if I go and see it on my main design, it should look the same, but this isn't over the entire page. Now, what I want to do is move this layer behind the actual things going over it. So the reason that we've added this position fixed is now this takes it out of the normal flow of the page. It's over everything on the page, but we want this to be behind that. So technically what I'm going to add here is a z-index of 0. By default, everything is z-index of 0. They're all at the same level. But what we can do now is change this content behind it to be a little bit closer to the user. So this layer is called section, and I want all of this section to be slightly higher. So in my style.css, I'm going to add to my section tag a position of relative and a z-index of 1. So it's slightly closer to the user. So what we can see now is our background, or in air quotes background, is now behind our section, which is kind of what we wanted. So we could have done this up here. We could have done it on the body tag instead. Why did we do it on here? Well, what we can add now is almost like an outline logo. So I'm going to go back into my Figma file. I'm going to copy this artboard. I'm going to copy it and paste it over here. And because we've just did this outline, instead of this fill, I can add a stroke. Now I'm just going to make this one red so we can see this in action. And we can see if we make this a little bit thicker, something like 10, we can see this outline appear. Now I don't want this outline to appear. I'm going to get rid of this fill so it looks like that. And I'm going to make this go on the inside as well, looking something like that. First thing I'm going to do is make this fill logo artboard be called outline logo instead. I'm going to export this. Now this isn't the final one. It's quite bright for now, but we'll add it in here. And what we should see now is this outline logo. I'm going to add it to my file. Here we go. And what I can do now is add the other bread to my content sandwich. I've got one which is behind and I want one in front. So here, what I'm also going to do is add another div tag with the class of outline. Now, again, there's no content in here. It's all for styling only. And what I want to do is basically the same thing as what I have with filled. So most of this is going to look the same, except for a few bits. So because they both kind of look the same, I'm going to say div.filled, comma, div.outline. Now what we get now is two levels which both have this filled logo, but I want to use for just div.outline this outline logo. So underneath here, I'm going to say, well, this is all fine except for this one. So what I'm going to say is div.outline. We're going to say have the background image URL outline logo.svg. And what we can see now is two layers starting to appear. This is both my logos being on top of each other. Back in Figma, I have this being on top of this. Now what I have right now is because both the z indexes for this div.outline are 0 and this main layer is at 1, they're both behind. But if I make this z index equal to 2, what I get is this outline appearing above this. So now I get the same kind of effect. Now one thing to consider here as well is because all of my content is on z index 1 and there's now a z index 2 above everything, I wouldn't actually be able to click any links underneath here. So just to make sure I can click any links, I want to ignore this div.filled and this div outline. To do that, we're going to add pointer events and none. And there we go. We could click through if we wanted to. We can drag the images now, for instance. We could click through to the next page. So this is kind of how we add this effect. So I can make this a lot more subtle than what I have right now. I can just go back to my Figma file. I can take this outline effect and actually make it black. Make it a little bit more subtle by making it 1. There we go. Looks pretty good. I can export my outline to my desktop. And what I can quickly do is just add this to my project again. And what we should see now is if I go to this page, we should see this outline effect. So by just adding a few things in here very, very quickly, we have a lot of control about how this logo looks. Essentially, we're using two logos rather than just one and layering them up in a content sandwich.